Visual hierarchy is all about arranging elements to show how important they are. It helps us, designers, communicate to our users what they should look at and when. We can use it to guide the users to digest more information and to do it easily and in the desired way. Visual hierarchy controls how our users experience the product they're interacting with. It's on the designer to create the hierarchy in such a way that the viewer doesn't even have to think about where to look first. Their eye is automatically drawn to each element in the exact order they're meant to view it. Typography is a crucial part of visual hierarchy. We can use size, color, contrast, alignment, repetition, proximity, white space, and styling to communicate the hierarchy levels. If we want to convey that a certain paragraph is a part of a section related to the title, we can move them closer together by using a smaller spacing in between them than you would use for unrelated sections. If we know that users notice larger elements more easily, we can make the headings larger and more noticeable. Therefore, the user is able to get a sense of what a particular section of a screen is about just by looking at a heading. It is also important to know that you can purposely put less emphasis on less important elements. I see a lot of beginners struggle by making some less important elements too noticeable, and then they keep on adding more and more and more to important elements. It is completely valid and even recommended to emphasize by de-emphasizing. In fact, most of your work will be finding that ideal balance of what needs and what doesn't need to be fighting for users' attention. The fewer elements that fight for the attention, the better, as it gives clearer signals to the user on what to focus on. Visual hierarchy is therefore also about removing unnecessary distractions. Users' eyes follow predictable reading paths, and they are culturally influenced. All cultures lead from top to bottom, but most cultures read from left to right. Left to right reading Western users use F and Z patterns when scanning a screen. F patterns apply to traditional text-heavy screens and pages like articles or blog posts. Z patterns apply to other sorts of pages like ads and websites where information is not necessarily presented in a block of paragraphs. We as designers can therefore reinforce these patterns to lead users to the desired goal or break those patterns to highlight a focal point. We talked a lot about contrast when choosing typefaces, but contrast is a crucial design element in multiple areas. Contrast occurs anytime two elements placed close together noticeably differ. It can be accomplished through size, color, style, shape, and more. For example, if you'd like to put more emphasis on your block title, you might make it stretch through more columns in your grid, creating a different shape than your body text creates. You could also use italic or bold styling to draw attention to parts of text. Don't combine them though, it can look too messy most of the time. One signal should be enough for most use cases. For example, using a different color, bolding the text, and adding italics draws too much attention to the text, so much that it feels like it isn't connected with the rest at all. Another way you can introduce contrast with typography is through small caps or all caps. If you're working with all caps, don't forget about character spacing. Another important element, sometimes invisible to the user, is the rhythm of the screen and the text on it. A rhythm is achieved through interval repeating elements. That means that we can use repetition in a structured way to help users understand the information they are consuming better. For example, when you're scrolling through a feed on a social media app, there is a rhythm that similarly styled post creates. When it comes to typography, a baseline grid is often used to create rhythm and consistency across your designs. A baseline grids are established from the baselines your typography sits on. These appear as visual aids in your design, spanning the width of your design and repeating vertically. There could be a discussion on is it bad or good, but I think most designers who get locked into bad baseline grids do it because they don't understand that rules are here to help us create better designs. If it's not working for you, fine, but there are definitely principles we can take and use for UI design that evolve from the concept of a baseline grid. For example, baseline grids limit more granular control in some situations, as you are supposed to position elements on the specific baselines in the interface that predictably repeat, one below the other. However, I most often use a softer version of the baseline grid, where I base all my spacings and line heights on the same base number. So if you're already familiar with 4-point or 8-point grids, you're well on your way to creating visual rhythm in your designs. My suggestion is, especially if baseline grids feel too limiting, to focus on consistency through heights of the elements in your design, and spacing between the elements too. For the final part of this lesson, let's discuss columns. They're more commonly used in graphic design, but for some web projects you might think about introducing them to your layouts. Especially, it's common for more editorial projects. It's essential to have enough spacing between columns to ensure that users can easily decipher one block from the other. Lines can easily bleed into each other, so take special care when you're working with columns. If you have text next to an image in a layout, even more spacing is needed. Grouping happens unconsciously, and you need to be master of visual grouping to master hierarchy and UI design in general.